2 minutes to live, 2 minutes. One minute to live, 1 minute. And you're live in 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5 o'clock on April 17, 2023 in the Council Chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. Roll call. Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy. Present. Councillor Prenger.
Present.
Councillor Steinoff Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
I'd like to also acknowledge staff that is here and several people in our audience. We welcome you. Thank you for being here tonight to present or to listen. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
I would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewa of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewa of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous people have made, both in caring for this land and in shaping and strengthening this community. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation.
Thank you. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda package that you have received? We did receive one motion from Councillor Stewart. Did you want to read that or just acknowledge that it's here for addition to the?
Fine reading it now, if you don't mind.
Okay, clerk, please, can you read it or does he read it?
So what is being asked tonight is that council add to the agenda 6.2 in council, and it will be a motion. And the motion is that staff will provide council with a report in May on the extreme past weather rain event with focus on wastewater and drainage issues and concerns. So this is only to see if you want to put this on. We're not debating that actual motion.
So there has been one proposed addition to the agenda. We need a mover for that addition. Councillor Stewart, seconder, Councillor Kavanaugh. All in favor of adding that motion? It's carried. Any other amendments, additions, deletions? Councillor Kavanaugh?
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I would like to request that in addition to the agenda, that we add an agenda item called the private flatbed and heavy equipment on public trails occurrence and bring it as an opportunity for discussion tonight.
Speak
Apologies.
slowly.
Yes. I'm just excited. For addition to the agenda is an agenda item entitled private use of flatbed and heavy equipment on public trails occurrence and bring that forward for discussion tonight.
Mover for that motion. Counselor Kavanaugh, seconder, Counselor Hinchberger, all in favor of adding?
Would we talk about it in committee of the whole? You're not asking, you just want a conversation. So we would ask to put it in committee of the whole then. So
Add that to committee of the whole, pretty please.
we'll do that vote in committee of the whole.
Thank you.
Okay. So that vote will come, but at the start of the committee of the whole meeting rather than council. Once again, I'd ask if there are any members with pecuniary interest that they disclose it now or as it arises on the agenda. Were there any registrations for the public forum? There were none. Adoption of minutes from regular and special meetings of council. Clerk, please.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that the minutes of the council meetings held on April the 3rd and April the 12th, 2023, regular and public meeting be adopted as printed.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Motions and notices of motion. Any notice of motions to be presented? Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, this notice of motion in commemoration of April 22nd being Earth Day will be a motion that I will be bringing forward in a future session. And that is that staff will be directed to bring forward for council's consideration amendments to the election sign bylaw to prohibit the use and placement of all election signs on municipal properties.
Thank you for that. Any other notices of motion? All right, we move into committee of the whole. Clerk, please.
Moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that council move into committee of the whole and upon completion, return to council.
All in favor? And that is carried. All right, I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting for the corporation of the municipality of Kincardine at 5:05 on April 12th, 2023. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from this agenda as identified by Councillor Kavanaugh previously?
Yes, please.
So we do have a motion on the floor regarding including flatbeds and construction equipment on public trails to be discussed. Moved by Councillor Kavanaugh. It was seconded by Councillor Hinchberger. All in favor of adding that to the agenda? And that's carried. Any other amendments, additions, or deletions? Once again, if you have a pecuniary interest, if you could declare it now at the time of the discussion of the item. And I would like to declare on Committee of the Whole 7.2 recommended community investment grants. As the chair of the Kincardine Community Services, and the Community Services is a potential recipient of the grant. So I would step aside and it will be Deputy Mayor Clark that chairs that agenda item. Adoption of minutes of the Committee of the Whole meetings. Clerk, please.
Moved by Beth Blackwell, seconded by Bill Stewart, that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on April 12th, 2023 be adopted as printed.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Excellent. As we continue our external partners orientation, we welcome tonight Aaron Lowry from the Lake Huron Coastal Conservation. And Holly, I'm sorry I didn't get Holly's last name, but she will be able to introduce herself. Welcome this evening. We're glad to have you here. Lake Huron Coastal Conservation has been an important part of maintaining our vital beach and lake. And they've been great advisors and partners in this journey we're on. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you very much. Your worship and council, thank you so much for having us this evening. Again, my name is Erin Laurie. I'm the executive director of the Lake Huron Coastal Center. I've been with the Coastal Center for 8 years now. And just a little bit about us. We're a registered charity. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been operating since 1998, so about 25 years now. And we've been doing science-based coastal restoration, education, and research projects since then with our small but mighty staff out of Goderich, Ontario. I'm here with one of those wonderful staff members, Holly Westbrook. She's our coastal restoration technician. And we just like to update you a little bit on what we've been doing recently and what we have going on right now. We are very lucky that we get to spend 100% of every single day working on Lake Huron issues. And as we know, our shores here, they attract thousands of visitors every year. And that means that we need to find a way to balance the conservation needs of our coastal areas with the tourism needs of our coastal communities. And some of these issues that our lake is facing include invasive species, plastic pollution, which we're all hearing about, water quality concerns, of course, and climate change is a big issue. And at the Lake Huron Coastal Center, we have a number of ongoing programs that are working to tackle some of these really important issues. So our first program is Coast Watchers. This is our longest running program, and we have over 225 volunteers who are out monitoring the coast every week for us, from Sarnia up to the Wasaga Beach area. And we actually just expanded our program this past year into Michigan as well. And we launched a brand new mobile app as well to make it easier for our volunteers to submit data to us. So now we can work with even more volunteers and get better quality data about what's happening along our lake. We also do a number of beach cleanups. Hopefully you've heard about some of these. We've been doing them for a long time, and we're working to tackle, again, that plastic pollution problem that's happening along our lake shore. We work with community organizations, lots of partners, and hundreds of volunteers to host these really fun, family-friendly events every year. And this year, we were lucky to receive a grant from the provincial government to host 13 beach cleanups along our lakeshore. And that includes one that's going to be happening in Kincardine on Saturday, July 15th. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. And just a quick thank you to your wonderful staff who've been so enthusiastic about supporting this event that's coming up. Lots of work to do to get ready for that. So we appreciate it. And we also have our Coastal Conservation Youth Corps. This is a new program we launched in 2020, quite the year to pick to launch a new program, but we managed to pull it off. It started in Goderich, and then we expanded it to Saugeen Shores in the last 2 years as well. And this is a program where we work with high school aged youth, and they spend either a week or 2 weekends with our staff. They come out, we teach them everything that we can tell them about the coast, and they get to find out what it's like, working for an environmental organization, and they volunteer working on projects that benefit our local communities. So they're out doing things like shoreline cleanups, tree planting, dune restoration, and removing invasive species. But they're also learning leadership skills, communication skills, things they can put on their resume. They're out having fun, making new friends with similar interests. And they also get almost all of the volunteer hours that they need for their high school diploma as well. And we've had some past participants go on to study environmental work in school, in post-secondary education. We were able to bring back one of our past participants to take on a leadership role in the program last year. It's been a really rewarding program to see. And we found that 97% of participants who were surveyed said that they felt inspired to get further involved in their community after participating in this program. So we would love to see this program come to Kincardine, obviously, but however, that will be dependent on future funding availability for this program. And then Holly's just going to talk a little bit about the program she's going to be working on.
Beach dune ecosystems are one of the most rare and fragile in all of Canada. Healthy and intact sand dunes provide us with lots of benefits, which we call ecosystem services. Dune vegetation filters runoff from inland areas before it reaches the lake, removing contaminants and discouraging harmful algae growth. Dunes protect the shoreline from damage caused by extreme weather events and act as a buffer to reduce flooding. Beaches and sand dunes also provide habitat for pollinators, rare plants, and animals. Healthy, functioning beaches are so important for our communities, and this is something that our Green Urban Champion program addresses. Our GRC program provides municipalities with support by working with shoreline residents to educate and empower them to care for our beaches. We provide them with advice and resources to enhance and restore Lake Huron's beach dune areas. One-on-one beach assessments with shoreline residents is the educational component of the program. In the spring and summer, we provide participants with many educational materials as part of our beach care toolkit. We answer questions they have about water levels and plants, and we provide suggestions for improvement of their shoreline. After the site visit, we provide a landowner with a proposed restoration plan. And we also frequently meet with municipal staff to discuss ideas for improving public beaches. Each fall, we work with volunteers to help participating Green Urban Champions restore their beach by removing invasive plants, planting native wildflowers and grasses, and installing sand fencing to encourage dune formation and prevent sand from blowing into places we don't want it, like walkways, roads, and harbors. We use Station Beach as a sustainable harvesting site for restoration projects throughout the municipality. And since 2020, more than 40 shoreline residents in Kincardine have participated in the GRC program. And the Lake Huron Coastal Center's presence in the community has raised the public's awareness and appreciation for the environmental, social, and economic value of beaches and dune ecosystems. The existing network of GRC participants and volunteers at Kincardine has influenced shoreline communities throughout the municipality to make choices every day that help preserve and protect Lake Huron's vulnerable and valuable beach dune ecosystems. The restoration methods used in the GRC program ensure that Kincardine's public beaches remain healthy and resilient so that residents and visitors can enjoy their diverse beauty for years to come, year-round. Outside of our conservation programs, we provide many educational opportunities for the public as well, like our upcoming Lake Huron Conference happening on May 5th in Grand Bend. This conference attracts government officials and staff, Indigenous communities, environmental professionals, and the general public, providing an opportunity to speak and learn about current Lake Huron issues and solutions. Hopefully you've received our invitation for council and staff to attend the event. We will be hearing from experts on many important topics, including municipal beach management and a panel discussion on coastal resilience and climate change.
So we're also available to help provide coastal management advice and support to municipalities. In the past, we have created beach management and stewardship guides for many municipalities. Most recently, we created a best management practices guide for both Huron-Kinloss and Saugeen Shores that they're able to provide to members of the public. It includes helpful information for shoreline property owners to learn more about what's actually going on along their coast and how to manage their properties. We also often review municipal plans. For example, we were asked to review the Kincardine Waterfront Master Plans. We're always happy to provide input. And we're able to address any general beach management questions for municipal staff with a stewardship focus. So the conservation authorities are a little bit different from us. They don't necessarily have the unique, in-depth skill set that we have when it comes to shoreline stewardship, but they do have regulatory responsibilities when it comes to the shoreline. So we're able to work together and provide them with support where needed. One of our board members is actually here with us today. She's the general manager for Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. So I think you should have heard from Jennifer Stevens earlier this month. So we have a great relationship with them. We've worked very closely with them since we began operating back in 1998. So Jennifer is available to answer any questions as well on that. So since we are a non-government charitable organization, we receive almost all of our funding through grants, sponsorships, and donations. In the past, we have received funding from the municipality of Kincardine through Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority for this type of work that we do. We would like to discuss that arrangement going forward, though, since with other jurisdictions, we do receive funding directly from the municipality for our conservation work. So for example, from the town of Goderich and the municipality of Central Huron. We did apply for funding this year as well through the community investment grant program that Kincardine has. And yeah, if you'd like to learn anything more about what I've talked about tonight, I know it's been a very quick presentation. There's lots of information on our website, free videos, webinars, monthly e-newsletter that you can register for, and we are on social media as well. And that's all we have to say tonight, but we're very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Aaron, Holly, thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions from council members? Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, through the chair, just yeah, you've got some great familiar sponsors that seem to help out our municipalities a lot. Just some questions about the costs. I've got 2 or 3 questions here, actually. Costs, timeline of us getting involved, and if we're too late, is there any chance on a smaller scale we could ever get involved this summer?
Yeah, so we had requested through the Kincardine, I think it's called a community investment grant, that program stream. We did request, I think it was $5,000 for a Green Ribbon Champion program. So that would go a long way to support that program being able to happen this year. And then we've managed to raise funds to run our youth corps in Goderich and Saugeen Shores. But if we wanted to expand that to Kincardine to do, a pilot test run here, we would need to raise about an additional $5,000 to make that happen this year.
Okay. Is that all right if I just, did they get grants for that, or is that possible, or is that something down the road we can do, or we do through other ways that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, we haven't received any funding from the municipality directly for this program before. This is kind of new for us, so I'm not sure what that might end up looking like, getting a grant from you guys, but we do also look for a lot of corporate sponsors for this program. Like this year, we're being funded by the Goderich Port Management Corporation, and the John Hindmarsh Environmental Trust Fund, and through Enbridge as well. So we are always looking for corporate grants too.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Want to talk a little bit more about this microplastics. Even my 97-year-old mother was talking to me the other day about it. When she starts talking about it, it must be something important. As you're well aware of, Kincardine gets the majority of their water from Lake Huron. What is the effects, and what is the prevention, or can we eliminate microplastics from our water treatment plant? Could you maybe expand a little more on what your knowledge of microplastic? I know you're not an expert, but it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert on water treatment or waste management by any means, but I do know that our Great Lakes are facing a crisis when it comes to plastic pollution. Studies have actually shown that some areas of the Great Lakes have a higher concentration of plastic pollution than the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that we hear about in the news. And it is quite alarming when plastic, enters our Great Lakes system. It's very hard for it to get back out. It doesn't spread out as much as it does in the ocean. So the concentrations can be higher. And so we've done some sampling. We've taken water samples from the lake, and you can hold up a bottle. It looks perfectly clear, like you might want to drink it. And we get that under the microscope, and we found that 97% of our samples had microplastics in it. And it tended to be mainly those teeny tiny fibers that are coming off of clothing and the wash. So there's been some research now. People are trying to find a way to filter the effluent that comes out of the washing machines. So before it has to end up getting to the water treatment plant, we can maybe try to get those clothing fibers out of the water, because that seems to be what's getting missed, is those really, really small particles.
All right. Once again, thank you very much, Aaron and Holly, for being here. We look forward to hearing more reports another time when you're back. Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
I would like at this time welcome Bruce Wallace and Stelina Williams from Nuclear Innovation Institute. Welcome, Bruce. It's good to have you here this evening to update us on what's going on at the Institute there.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate the opportunity. Want to correct the record a little bit with Aaron here, because Aaron said there was one board member from the Lake Huron Coastal Center here tonight, but I'm on the board of the Coastal Center. But don't ask me any technical questions. Anyway, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about the NII. I became president of the NII in late 2019, and I remember getting the job. I was very excited and told friends that I was going to be the president of the Nuclear Innovation Institute, and they said, "That's fantastic. What does it do?" And I thought that was actually a fair question at the time. Stellina was employee number one, which is not exactly like being employee number one at Google or anything, but it's still, but it was very small. And really in the early days, what the NII was an aspiration. It was an aspiration of Mike Renchick and the leadership at Bruce Power, who were aware that there was an awful lot of money flowing into this region for work on the MCR and the refurbishment of those plants, and that there was going to be a commitment economically to be here for years. And they wanted to make sure that some of that stayed here, that there was a footprint, that there was some good that came to the community out of it. And so that was the impulse and the aspiration behind it. What it left us with was kind of an open book to really try to channel that into something that mattered. And what mattered was really important, because I'm not a young guy, and what I wanted to do in terms of going forward was to make sure that whatever work we took on and was something that mattered, that would make a difference, that would have an impact on the community. And that's sort of part of the culture of NII. It's really permeated the place. It's a terrific place to work, filled with people who are significantly younger than me, but filled with energy and great ideas, but all of them really motivated by a sense of mission about trying to bring something to this community and beyond that. So, at 3, right, Aaron? This is where we go. More formally, just a reminder that, and to take you through some of the background, the NII is an independent not-for-profit. We are capitalized by the private sector. It's all private sector money that's in the organization and has stood it up. We opened our doors in January of 2020, which was a interesting time to start business. But the idea was that we would increase the pace of innovation in the industry, which was crucial to its success in any kind of clean energy transition. And our role was to kind of act as a convener and a connector. So to sort of deal with industry or community challenges and to connect that to solutions. So think of NII as a platform, a place to come with those kinds of problems, but also that we would have a strong focus on raising awareness and community engagement and education around some of these issues around a clean energy transition, which we hear about all the time, but we've never had to think about before, and is actually a very complicated, complex, potentially expensive, politically fraught sort of process. So we also see ourselves as being able to be on the side of people and helping them come to grips with some of the fundamental issues around what goes into an energy transition. And I say that by way of just emphasizing that we're not an advocacy organization that goes out to kind of drive home the nuclear perspective. It's really to say, on the side of people, how do we help you understand these challenges going forward? So broadly, that was sort of the mission as we set up. So if you can summarize that as wanting to have a lasting local impact in the community and helping the industry itself get fit to compete for this transition. So these are the companies that stood us up outside of the county, which did not put money in. These are companies that have capitalized this, and they've been incredibly generous in terms of putting money into our programs, into the operations of the NII, and into educational funding, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. You can think of us, we've narrowed down all these sort of aspirations and come up with 2 streams, 2 lines of business, for lack of a better term. One is we do industrial innovation projects. We work with the companies to help them get fit to compete in a clean energy transition. And the other line of business would be looking at having a big impact on the community. So on the first side, we work with emerging technologies, robotics, LiDAR, data science, 3D printing, all those kinds of things. And they tend to be projects that we run with our companies or associated companies. And that's a little bit more of an internally focused set of projects that we run. But we also, and this is a little closer to my heart actually, because I don't come out of the nuclear industry, we have an awful lot of community-focused initiatives. And one of them is in the educational space. I have to press this over and over. Again, the focus here on impact. Early in the pandemic, looking for a way to try to just provide some relief and help and comfort to families, to students, to parents, to teachers at the time who are struggling to deal with how do we kind of get through this school year. We started doing some coding classes. Philip Craig came and ran them. He was extremely successful at creating sort of a new approach to learning that was incredibly engaging. It was all delivered remotely. But there was tremendous reaction to it. It was very, very powerful in terms of the traction that we got on it. The response was phenomenal. And the desire was just for more. Like, what else can you do? How can you help us? And that has expanded now into a program called NII Explore, which we've turned into a registered charitable foundation so that we can raise funds separately for that in a different way. But it really is about connecting the students. We talk about meeting them where their minds are. So whether that's on a screen or in person, we've developed programming that is focused on being engaging and trying to bring the sort of the thrill of science, the thrill of new technologies to them. And we've done that. It's one of the things that's just been one of our biggest successes. And we've been able to expand that program now where we have other sort of a tremendously well-educated staff that is really versed in the way to communicate science, to talk about science, and to inspire people going forward. Right down to the notion of doing children's books. The other element, if you think about the continuum of ages, so some of that stuff works from K to 8 and beyond, but we also do sort of the unfortunately named thought leadership, but it's about trying to talk about some of those issues I mentioned before in and around an energy transition and help people understand them. So we produce reports, we produce policy documents, and we work really hard to connect nuclear to other sectors. So as opposed to thinking of nuclear as a silo, as a place that exists unto itself and doesn't really care what happens once that electricity leaves the plant, we've really worked really hard to connect with the agricultural sector, for example. So one of the projects we run is a quite significantly funded project by Bruce Power with a group called ALICE, which is an agricultural umbrella organization that looks for ways to decarbonize through carbon sequestration. We've got an active project now that's running on 600 acres that NII is administering, where the farmers are able to frankly monetize some of their more marginal land. But that's just an example of how we cross over into other sectors and get out of the nuclear bubble, so to speak. So we produce policy work, we speak up for nuclear, we talk about its impact and its importance to this region in other regions. We don't just talk to ourselves up here and break our hands from patting ourselves on the back. It's about taking that message of the importance of nuclear and what it means to this province, to the rest of the province in other places, whether it's Queen's Park, Parliament Hill, and beyond. I'm not quite sure why that slide's there. These are pictures from, well, this is an example of sort of a different approach, I think, to the way we talk about the nuclear industry. This is the ball pit we've designed to illustrate how medical isotopes work. We'll roll on that. Sorry. We work very hard in strengthening communities. We have a program called Environment at NII that funds environmental projects, including in Southampton, some research into Fairy Lake and to try to figure out why it's choking itself to death and whether there's a way out of that, but also by bringing technology to town. We ran a highly successful Swerve event in Southampton last year that brought 4,000 people through our doors in 2.5 days, an opportunity to meet robots, to play with holograms and virtual reality and to see 3D printing, a very hands-on experience again, but something that was different, something that filled, we think, a gap in this region and is important to this region's future in terms of inspiring people to engage in these areas. And because after all, they are a workforce of the 21st century, whether it's for nuclear or otherwise. So what's next, frankly, is more of the same. More support for sustainable economic development, more applications of these new technologies and, for growth, more innovation projects that connect us to other sectors, more STEM programs in schools, and expansion of that with some specialist activities in the extracurricular space. And a greater emphasis on skilled trades is something that will emerge in the coming months, and you'll see NII taking a much more active role in the development of future skills and professional development. And we're going to build a local hub around climate change information, because so much of what we hear is globally focused, and there's a real thirst and a desire to know what the implications of climate change are going to be here in this region. And we're going to do more of those Swerve events. It's really important. It's important that that there isn't a gap between an area like this and people who live in Vaughan or live in Markham or live in Toronto. And we've talked about internally, we talked about how last year's was a five-ring festival, a five-ring circus. That was good for the people who came. It also felt like a five-ring circus internally at times because of its ambition and how we stretched people. We're not going to do another one like that this year, but we will do another five-ring festival in 2024. And in the meantime, Swerve, which is our event brand, will continue in sort of smaller, more mobile ways. It will not always be in Southampton. It will be everywhere. Going back again to that philosophy of meeting people and kids where their minds are. So more surprises, more of what this area doesn't have now, and more of what we need. That's it. Thank you for your time, and I'll take questions. Or Selena will take the questions.
I'm kind of familiar with NII, but my mind is still exploding from what you just said with the possibilities. But are there other questions from council members from Bruce's presentation? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thanks, Bruce. Good presentation. It's very exciting. I'd like to be an employee with all those balls rooms, and it sounds like you guys have a lot of fun over there. But what I want to ask you is, I know that you were working with the MIC group. I know that our CEO is on the MIC.
Yes.
What's the connection? It seems like things are not quite as close as they were. I knew they had some issues with personnel, but could you sort of explain what your connection is?
Sure.
Thank you.
We were supporters of the MIC in the beginning. It was a terrific initiative. It was set up as a pilot program that was going to run until December 31st of last year. There were some personnel changes midway through, and we wanted to make sure that that pilot had a chance to finish and to demonstrate what it could do. We think we did so successfully. We were really proud of some of the initiatives, Smart Beach obviously being probably the most prominent among those. And that was time. We're fairly private sector focused in this. Yeah.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, thanks for the presentations. You know, I get lots of questions. Maybe a presence in Kincardine, since we're the host community, is that ever the possibility, or is that even bringing an event here, or something like that? Is my first question.
Absolutely. That's the intention. You have the days of being, sort of building bricks and mortar in one place and hoping people come to you is just not going to work. I always found that the silliest phrase ever was that, if you build it, they will come. Well, not necessarily. They need to know you exist. You need to go to them. It's our intention to broaden ourselves. Port Elgin is our headquarters. That's where we started. But if we're going to succeed, if we're going to achieve the things we wanted to do, we need to be present on more than just a casual basis in other communities. And Kincardine is an obvious place.
Okay, thank you. And just the 600 acres, can you tell me where that is?
No, I can't.
Perfect. Okay, thanks.
I know where.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Stuff like that.
Thank you,
It's not in
Chair.
one- But I will say, it's not in one place. It's a collection of, it is.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Thank you for coming tonight. Recently, we received a presentation from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and they had a watershed report card. And remember that in the area of Force specifically, there were some areas in the southern part of the municipality of Kincardine that were rated as poor. So when you were talking about the Atlas program tonight and a way of contributing to addressing climate change through carbon sequestration, are there any of Alice related projects ongoing in the municipality of Kincardine, specifically in the southern part? And if there aren't, are there any plans to?
I'm sorry that I don't know what I will come back and report back to you on where those pieces of land are. All I know is that it's been fully taken up. So it was incredibly popular. It wasn't as if it was hard to do. So there's a desire to expand it even further.
So it kind of works backwards. There's a certain amount of offset you're hoping to achieve, and then a number of acreage that would achieve that. And
Yeah.
there's like an allotment like that.
Correct. There's also a compounding problem that you need to have technology, and you need to have a set of criteria that measure it accurately and in a way that it is acceptable to markets. For example, unique criteria that people agree on and consider could be a standard. And that is not, it's still a very malleable kind of moving proposition right now. But it's good to engage, and one of the ways you'll learn about it is by running these kinds of projects. You learn what you need, you learn where you have challenges and where you have problems. But I will find out exactly where those parcels are and get back.
Or maybe now I'm reminded now, I'm pretty sure I had a discussion with the CAO on this issue recently and stuff like that. If we're not, the municipality isn't already in possession. I'd be really interested to hear more about the Alice
Okay.
concept and how we might be able to work together.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Listen, Chadwick.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you through you. I'm sorry, I sitting here is sometimes awkward. This question is directed to you. The youth programs I am particularly fond of. I know that our mayor is very aware of those programs with his son. And so I just think that, especially when you were saying like meeting people where they are and then also innovation, I think the focus on youth there is really powerful in hoping to connect more youth to the future of nuclear, because it's not just the processes that are innovative, it's the minds that are coming up behind us. So I appreciate that. Are there opportunities, or when you talk about the extracurricular activities, are they coming? Could they be offered here? Is that something that's going to be all virtual? Just curious a little bit more about those.
So they've tended to be virtual in part because they were done during March breaks in the middle of COVID. So they were done that way. But we have more ideas and then we have time and staff. So there will be more. One thing I'll point out on the educational side is that we've been welcomed by the school boards and the class and teachers and the individual schools themselves. We've been in all but 3 of the schools right across the region through 4 boards, I guess it is, right? 4 or just the 2. But we're in other words, it's not simply for we talk about raising the floor and raising the ceiling as well. So the raising the floor means we really want to make sure that we reach as many students as we can wherever they are. And the way to do that is through the schools rather than running specialized programs. At the same time, you want to inspire people who have more desire to challenge themselves in other ways. You want to offer things. So we're doing a science Olympics, which is being run out of Georgian over in Owen Sound in late May. As another kind of external extracurricular, if you want, specialty. But we have lots and lots of ideas that we'd want to do right across the county.
Deputy Mayor
Design.
Clark, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. My question may have just been answered. I was going to ask whether you've been able to partner with any of the schools. So that was my initial question. I think you perhaps answered that. The second one was the spur event, which was put on, was absolutely phenomenal. I had the opportunity to take my boys down and they didn't want to leave. So well done on all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Bruce, Stelina, thank you for being here. We appreciate your input in our community and we look forward to some of the great adventures we'll have together.
Fantastic. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, moving on to the reports in our committee of the whole package. We're going to be dealing with the waterfront master plan. And I would like to ask the clerk to read the motion that we're going to be dealing with as a result of our discussion tonight. Clerk, please.
Moved by Jennifer Pranger, seconded by Mike Hinchberger, that committee of the whole recommend that council receive the waterfront master plan.
Hello, clerk. Could I ask you a question, please? Just exactly what does it mean to receive a report?
Through you, Mayor. Basically, it just means that you are accepting it. You're taking it as something that you have read and you receive.
So it's not committing us to a budget, a path, a plan, but we are appreciative of the work that staff has put into it in providing an overarching look at a broad range of directions that we might actually take. But there's focus to the broad range. So we're receiving it. We're not committing to anything. We're not budgeting anything, but we are accepting it and receiving it as the direction. So I welcome you, our director, tonight. Jane, if you would lead us in from here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And through you, I just wanted to take a really quick minute as we've got Sean back here this evening, which is great to see him and his team. He's brought a member of his team as well. I just wanted to take a minute to really thank council. This project has encompassed 2 councils. It started in the previous council term. in the summer of 2022. And I must commend this council for your engagement over the last couple of months. It's been really refreshing. I've spoken to a number of you at some of the community engagement evenings that we've had. And certainly probably more engagement than I've ever seen in any plan before that I've been part of over the last 3 months. So I certainly want to thank council, and I certainly want to take a second to thank the public as well. And Sean, as part of his report, will share some of that content that he's received. So really, that's all I wanted to say at this point. I'd like to turn the microphone up to Sean and his team, and to take us through the information that he's gathered over the last 8 months. So thank you.
We're getting it loaded. That looks like it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, worship, counselor, staff, and others that are here tonight. I'm back, Sean Kelly from Plurals, to talk a bit about your Kincardine Waterfront Master Plan and the draft final report, where we're at today. As Jane alluded to, this has been a project that started with a different council. It's come to this council. We've done a lot of work. We've been here for a while. We have a sizable team that was working for us off the Plural team, and we teamed up with Judy Sullivan from Aqua Solutions 5 Incorporated. That's our engineering specialist in lake and river environment systems. And while I only have the municipality of Kincardine down there and Jane's name, I would like to say that everyone that we've been in touch to on various initiatives, certainly engagements on this plan, has been very, very supportive, inquisitive, no real hard challenges other than, tough questions. And that's what the process is about. And it's supposed to be tough questions, and we certainly embrace those and take those on. A master planning effort's a little different than some other projects that folks are typically used to when they become build projects right away. But master plans, in their notion of planning for the next 25 plus years, definitely cannot be a snapshot in time today. They need to have enough meat to them so it can actually evolve with the evolution that will happen through the plan itself. So I'm just going to give you a quick background on what we've been doing, whereas at last presentation, basically, we're looking at a part of the Kincardine waterfront, a 1.5 kilometer spread, as we most know, as the main beach environment of Reunion South, Reunion Station, Station Beach, McPherson Park, and Dunsmuir Park, kind of on both sides of the river. And that was provided to us in the terms of reference. Process to date, and again, we started last summer. Responding certainly earlier in the summer to an RFP that was provided to us, but started with the on-site work and getting background information, creating a current condition snapshot in a report format of the biophysical, cultural, and some of the social conditions we were finding down at the waterfront itself. Phase 2 was really our community engagement piece. And that was pretty robust for us to reach out to the local community to ensure a comprehensive understanding of the users and area, and their needs now and into the future. Putting that together, we did that a number of ways, and I'll talk about that in a sec, but putting that together, preparing the plan, really looking at our phase 3 was really just looking at a series of strategies to guide what we would like to call supportive design and placement of amenity, landscape, and infrastructure for the waterfront. That includes the maintenance and operation as well. The implementation and budget piece is something that we look at plan management. How do we do this? The project delivery to ensure that the plan remains an effective basis for preservation, development, and improvement along that 1.5 kilometer stretch. Report consolidations where we're at now. It's a draft final, not final yet. Preparing all work to date into a comprehensive planning document. We review this with municipal staff and others, and revising as necessary as we need to get there. We're in the spring of 2023, exactly where we thought we would be when we got to this. It's not pushing me forward. There we go. Process and review. We'll go one more. So we inventoried, we looked, we were on site observation, looked at a bunch of different things, measured a bunch of things out, A lot of photo documentation, understanding some behavior patterns based on the time we were there. Obviously, we won't capture everything, but for the most part, we had a pretty good gist of how the waterfront operates. We've been here before. We invited a lot of people, the community stakeholders, and I know we have LECC here tonight, but accessibility advisory committees, first responders, chambers of commerce, recreation groups, others, members of past council, current council, obviously the neighboring residents and community groups and frequent visitors that we could find. We did this online. We did this in person. We did workshops and presentations. We welcome them all. 40 community members, 526 responses on the survey online, 10 key stakeholders and the counselors. And then we had a final community workshop later in November, and then we added the one we had in early January. So we collaborated a lot with the community as well as with our engineer specialized in river and shoreline environments. We need to understand more than the literature that was out there. We're dealing with a dynamic beach environment and the hazards posed by that. We want to look at shoreline positioning within the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. I've had a discussion with them. Our responsibilities for this parcel of land, certainly under the Planning Act, and any key considerations related to current and anticipated environmental conditions, hazards, threats to public safety, and use and behaviors. Seen this slide before. I was actually questioned on it the last time, and it was a great question. Does that represent our community? Is that enough people? But on an online survey, 526 participants is usually considered a pretty decent response rate. And you can take the breakdown of that, permanent residence was a large part of that. So what we're looking for, types of questions, satisfaction with existing conditions, willingness for change, those sort of things. There were 9 community priorities that came out of all our engagement pieces, which included recreation, accessibility, vehicular use, furnishings, active transportation, and certainly the entrance and access. The top 3, however, were safety, washrooms, and environment. And some people might say, well, this is nothing we haven't heard before. I'd beg to differ. I think having it in one consolidated place, one piece, and being able to document that, we weren't able to find that in any literature to date in anything from the municipality. So being able to have this now, I think, is a pretty powerful tool for future planning and making sure that, community health, safety, and resiliency will take priority. We obviously do what we do as landscape architects. We're design planners and landscape architects, but we look at the land and we try to provide some opportunities and constraints on the parcel of lands that we're looking at it. Whether in this case, significant slope, dune systems, open space, mature parkland that exists, and any of the significant infrastructure and access, and looking certainly at a RIP current zone that was brought up to us on a number of occasions. So how do you apply this and how do you deal with this? Well, we understand safety could be improved upon. It says Riptide there, should RIP current zones and water safety, boardwalks, vehicular and pedestrian circulation, certainly under that. Kincardine can be and is a model for dune restoration. We just heard a bit about that on a previous presentation. All the good stuff that's happening there. Refresh is in order, loud and clear. Everyone understands that. Incremental development over 30, 40-year period, 50-year period will result in that. We see that in every community of this size, certainly on some of the major assets that it may have. And it does continue to be a little bit difficult to care for, probably in response to some of the incremental development and some of the things that may be happening, and then not having the proper sort of maintenance or management plans to deal with some of the assets that might be found in those areas. So looking at consolidating incremental development and having some deliberate decision-making that's informed of some evidence regarding materiality, furnishings, and finish is really, really important where you want to go. We also heard that connectivity is key. Enhancing welcoming points of entry would be optimal for the waterfront precinct, and basically encouraging some movement from town to beach to waterfront to lakefront back into town and to the adjacent neighborhood communities. Where we left off, draft final report. We were working towards a draft final report. We had 4 key sections at that time. The report was a sizable report, could be daunting for some. To read 140 pages at that time seems maybe a bit of a challenge, but an appropriate balance of required text, graphics, photographs seemed to round that out for us. But, capturing existing conditions, points of community engagement, analysis, and recommendations and demonstrations on how to move forward. Again, being paramount to the fact that you have a one-stop shop now with all this information in it. So the plan's application, even though we were looking at 1.5 kilometers of waterfront, a strategic plan like this as a waterfront master plan will outline a series of strategies and recommendations that are rooted in best practices, community values, environmental resiliency, and operational and fiscal realities. While we have been focusing on a certain area of the beachfront, I would certainly tell you that these strategies and recommendations could be transferred elsewhere in the municipality. So since that time, I was here last time, we've created the strategies. So the plan in essence is a set of strategies that will last over time and that are clearly definitive to intent, but perhaps not to as final form. That's important to understand. The intent is the value of this document. The final form is something that will be developed over time. And the easiest thing to understand here is that if you have a project that does not come into fruition in 10 years, creating the final form or what that would look like right now, this day and age, might be futile. We looked at a bunch of strategy categories: environmental quality, spatial structure and composition, project design, identity and movement within the waterfront, and implementation. Each one of these has a subset of other strategies that should be adhered to. And I'll just take one for instance. I'm not going to go through them all right now. Environmental quality. There's 9 strategies embedded under environmental quality. Quality, permanence, and economy. Do it right, do it of a certain quality, only do it once. Only do it once. There's economy in that. Environmental responsibility is a standalone strategy. The spirit of the place. There's something really special about Kincardin's waterfront. We all know that. We all appreciate that. We've heard about that from many folks. Waterfront safety is paramount. Transitional landscapes. Well, there's landscapes that take you from the water to the dune, to parking environments, to community gardens, to sloped areas, to residential areas. So transitional landscapes, what would that really mean? Valued places, preserved, adapt, integrate. Creating a beautiful shoreline, commemoration, public art, display, revealing culture. Respecting waterfront neighbors, because you do have neighbors on either side of the river, and there is a demand, certainly an expectation that would be the case. So again, categories with several embedded strategies within them. And as you know, as you're in the document, you would read those and see those. But what we get from there are project themes. And we had 17 project themes. And, you know, a lot of folks might say, wow, this might be a no-brainer on many levels. We were finding the project themes are a way of expanding and commanding some commanding some presence, certainly over the typical types of projects that may happen. Certainly we have beach access realignment, dune supplementation, dealing with transitional gardens, road realignment and improvements, while dealing with access and entrance, so Station Beach entrance enhancements, marina parking reorganization, vegetation buffer, expansion. How about self-directed disposition? Kincardine emergency response plan update, wayfinding strategy. A few of these things are already in the works. We know that, or have been done. They just may not have been ignited and mobilized as of yet. Beach capacity analysis. What can a beach actually hold? Downtown connectivity enhancements and the facility and amenity consolidation. 14 being designated emergency access routes. 15 was a big one always, boardwalk replacement. And 16, waterfront fixtures and furnishings. 17, waste management. So while you have the look and feel of certain things, but you're also looking at how things will operate down as a project in the waterfront. So we created 3 demonstration plans. As have you read in the report, pretty much status quo remains for the first one. The demonstration plan is what it could be like if the themes and certainly the projects and strategies are embraced from the document. So it's very close to what's found on the waterfront today, with a focus on maintaining, improving existing circulation, programming, dune ecosystems, and consolidating facilities as they reach the end of their lifespan. There's some wildly applicable project themes from the sidebar, The highlights, utilizing existing road alignment, reclaims Reunion Park green space, consolidates amenities and facilities in a flexible guest service plaza. Demonstration 2 has more of an environmental bent. So we went from status quo to something that was larger, more environmental. The drastic change to what's current conditions are found at the waterfront. This scheme positions the natural environment at the forefront and focuses on promoting dune establishment and providing ample room for successive vegetation growth. Well, you're going to maximize your dune space. You're going to position facilities and road infrastructure inland further from the waterfront conditions. This is extreme and very different to what you have now. But we do have community members that were actually advocating for this, and that's the process. So widely applicable project themes, the same 4 and 5 numbers that were found in the first one. So we've gone from status quo to environmental. Well, you can go and say, I'll meet you halfway and do the hybrid. Balance between the two. This scheme will see significant changes throughout the waterfront to improve the visitor experience, certainly safety, circulation, environmental quality, and overall character of the waterfront. So while it still positions facilities and road infrastructure more inland, further from the waterfront conditions, and reclaims Reunion Park green space, it will consolidate amenities and facilities into a flexible guest service plaza. It will also provide enough opportunity to get some savvy ecological or ecosystem servicing into the project. The next couple of slides are really just looking at how these differ. The top one, demonstration 1, status quo, right down to the bottom at the hybrid. So it's merely the positioning of the road and the boardwalk, and you can see the sizing of dune environments changing. Beach is pretty much similar to what we had in all 3 of them, if you look through them. Just how much of the site do you want to use? And you can see that red line to the far left, where basically that is our scope area and how much we can push into that. From a sectional view, the same sort of information there. Looks pretty much the same in all 3 variations. That's purposeful, all responding to the strategies in the document. Anyone's interpretation of this document should probably get close to this. It might look a little different in the end. However, you'll find that, the utilization of existing road and boardwalk alignments as seen in demonstration 1, the maintenance of existing dune space, maintains existing beach towel space. It basically positions the existing garden footprint to accept naturalized plantings. That's a very subtle change. Everything else is pretty much an upgrade of existing equipment and facility. So that would probably be the one that a lot of people would think the plan would have been about. But if you do jump down to the second one, you can see where we've maximized in demonstration 2, dune space. So that positions facilities and road infrastructure inland further from waterfront conditions to be able to provide some means of additional dune environment. And the document is laden certainly with imagery. Some of it that looks like this is, what would the entrance look like or could be like? Again, a demonstration as we come into this. As you drive into the site, it looks like parkland. It looks like you're coming to a waterfront. You have glimpses on the marina on the right. When you get down to, a warmer welcome down below and certainly get on the boardwalk, it's different, not drastically different. Still has lighting, it still has planting, it still has dune environment. It would probably be nuanced in a different way to increase safety, resiliency, make it a lot more sustainable on many levels. And certainly when you look at what could happen as a smaller guest services kind of plaza and the types of structures you could have there and the type of environment that's that we felt was needed and certainly were called for from a lot of the folks we talked to and certainly at the open houses. You can see it could be a very lovely area still. So again, the intent is about providing direction going forward on a list of sub projects. It may not be definitive in final form at this time. But what you have is a very valuable document to take you forward in any of the planning over the short, medium, long range term. The long range projects is out about 25 years, short term 3 to 5, medium in between. So I can probably, so the summary on this 5-phase project over 8 months, generating a draft final report to guide waterfront improvement to the short, medium, and long range. We've engaged plenty of community members. We felt through this on a number of levels. We had 9 priorities that came from that. We managed to tease out 28 planning strategies if you add them all up under different categories. And then we had 17 project themes that can be acted upon. Short term has 27, midterm 34, the long term are 12. And then we had the 3 demonstration plans just defining and just showing what this could be like in the end ultimately. So other than that, I think that was probably our last slide, and I can take questions.
Sean, thank you very much. As our director alluded to, there were a number of questions. Do any council members have questions that they would like to address to Sean this evening? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Sean, for all the work that you've done. I was reading page 2 of the final report, and you keyed on this, that the plan's a set of strategies and that the demonstration plans in the plan represent simply one set of possible outcomes. So my question is, if I read the contract right, is when the work is done, the municipality is in possession of all the documents, software, et cetera, related that it could use then to, as it goes through budget planning or stuff like that, and is imagining constituent or communal projects, it could mark up on its own the demonstration plans to create variations of its own?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yes, absolutely, just 100%. That's what you want to really think about, is that at this point, I don't know. I can give you a priority of the projects I would certainly do for in the short term, and there's a listing of that. But what we'd like to also see is that there's some engagement. You know your fiscal realities, you know your horsepower to do certain things on this project, and you have a listing of projects to do that. But yes, you have the document, you have the pieces there, and that should help find a workable path forward.
Yeah, because I was imagining ahead already to 2024 like budget process, and imagining there'd be under community services, but some potential projects that would be outcomes of this plan. It would really be great at those times when council's evaluating them, to evaluate them against, say, the principles or the checklist that you described, and even a visual I find is very helpful to try to see how it would fit in this context. So thank you for that.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. I really like a lot of this plan. I think we can look around at some other communities in our area and how they've done things with their beach. And I think that this one actually really captures a lot of my priorities for the beach, and I think the broader communities as well, which is like environment, the shoreline resilience, keeping the waterfront public and community focused rather than privately commercialized. And thinking about the full life cycle of our assets so that we can actually take pride in the waterfront long term. So one of the challenges I have with the document is it's quite dense. It's very nice to read, but it is 189 pages. And we talked very briefly prior to this meeting that I think something like I don't want to say like a worksheet, but like a shorter 5 or 6 page document that goes through the questions or goes through the different strategies as questions, so that if a project comes before council or comes to the community, that we can actually answer those core questions. And I kind of pulled, I don't know if it's possible to pull up the report again or the presentation, but you had the listing of the strategies, and they're kind of in 5 categories. And my interpretation of the plan, it's more of a framework, I would say maybe, is the first environmental quality is like, is it a good fit for our waterfront and long-term organizational capacity? The second is like, okay, so we've decided that it fits a vision. So how should it fit within the landscape and the overall layout? And that looks at those strategies under the spatial element. The third is like, once we know where it goes, how do we ensure it contributes to the cohesive identity and sense of place, that it fits in Kincardine specifically, not just, it happens to be there, or it could be anywhere. And then once we know what it looks like, how do we prioritize the human experience of getting around the area and getting to and from it? And then lastly, that kind of project management implementation, which is like, once we've decided we're moving ahead, how can we ensure the project's long-term success? So for me, that's kind of what this document is giving us specific answers for how do all those questions get answered for Kincardine. And I just don't know if it would be possible to create something that is a bit more bite size so that when we are at budget time and someone says, hey, I really want to build a Ferris wheel at the park, at Reunion Park, we can actually kind of look at, does it even get past the first question of being a good fit for our waterfront? And we can kind of fill that out and actually have a reference document rather than trying to go through the 185-page plan again at that time.
And one answer, yes, to be brief, but yes, it is a dense document and there is a lot of comment in there. And I think the councillor suggesting is a bit of a vetting tool at the front end. So as projects kind of, before they actually come and become mobilized, but you have curiosities about it, or people coming forward or focus groups coming forward of the project, you can actually do the first flush and to see, can we meet the basic requirements from the strategies? And you're right, we have 5 categories with everything embedded in it. There's a lot of stuff that could certainly be checkoff points for that. We do have a subsection under project design. So as projects come online, certainly, if someone came to the municipality and had a specific project, they could certainly vet the project itself from a project design standpoint to get the best project you can out of it. But I think what the councillor is suggesting is something in advance to that, before you even get to that level of detail, and you invest the time and resources into the project. But yes, can be done.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of things I like about it, but there's some concerns I have with it too. Maybe following up on Councillor Blackwell of us making some rash decisions about, maybe getting in. I thought we could get some more community involvement. I guess 500, probably you do a lot of these. It's a good number. I was kind of hoping, that we could get a little bit more. And, when we redid the streets down around Dunsmore Park and the parks down there, we lost a lot of character. We have better structure, better parking lot. Like it was crumbling everywhere, but we lost the character as kind of the fabric of our community. And it might be music on Wednesday and Sundays. It might be kids festivals on Tuesdays. And I just want to be sure when we spend money in those parks that we think long-term and we really think about that, about family, about character, about a vision that, I wish I would have been a little better when we brought that project forward the first time to save more space there, but there is ideas how we can get that space back. And I just, I believe in change and we need to invest, in our waterfront, but I just want to be sure that we get the answers and the plan, budget time quick enough to really analyze and talk to the public. Okay, just.
Director, I'm gonna ask you to respond to that. Broadly speaking, how do you foresee the presentation of any potential, as we start the work at the waterfront restoration? How would you foresee the presentation of those changes coming forward to council? Would it just be through the budget process or earlier, or how do you envision that, please?
Thank you for the question. The budget process will articulate the journey, I'll say, on how we get to the conclusion. So if we're talking about Dunsmore Park as an example, and the councillor has indicated we've lost some, I believe you said, character to it, then there's an opportunity through the budget process to articulate how we want it to look through. And I know councillors don't always like to hear the word community engagement, but you need that community engagement throughout these processes in this plan. So what Sean has presented to us is a concept for sure. Within this concept plan are smaller plans, and each smaller plans, as we bring them forward to council, is going to involve community engagement. We've got residents that thrive on community engagement and want to be part of that process. And granted, we've got others that we don't hear from them until it's being built. And then all of a sudden, well, wait, I didn't know you were doing that. So I'm not sure if I'm necessarily answering your question, but each I'll say recommendation or component in here involves a mini process as well to get to that. Okay, sorry.
So if I might paraphrase your answer, we might see the change in the budget process, the proposal, but you would have started it 6, 8, 10 months ahead with community engagement and landscape design, all those sorts of things, and then bring it to us later on. So it's not a quick make up your mind decision. There's a extensive consultation through that process.
Correct. And I want to be really clear that council realizes that it may be for some of these more than 1 year. It may cross over into 2 years. It may have a 2-phase approach or a 3-phase approach, or in some cases a 4-phase approach. You know, it's not a quick decision-making process. And that's our job in order to present that to council on what that process looks like. So articulating that clearly throughout the budget process.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I appreciate the report. I think it's great. One of the things that I found interesting is I've already started receiving some feedback on what's planned. And actually, because you brought up the other park, I'm going to just say with our beautiful new cement pavement parking lot, I find it's more challenging to get a parking space. There's not as much space as used to be with the way it's been done. And with some of these visuals, it looks, maybe this is a false interpretation, that we're losing a significant amount of parking, which is already a challenge. So I would really like to understand how that works if we're encouraging more access into the waterfront, like reality is for a lot of people. I know we're looking at bikers and such, but when I come to the beach, I'm coming from Tiverton. If we have other members from outside the town proper coming to enjoy these facilities, parking is definitely a consideration. And then the only other comment bridging off of that I just wanted to bring up, because we talk about the 2024 budget. Obviously, I really do care about safety and environment, but I also know that we face some huge challenges. I'm going to admit full and out. I was very naive in like the kind of constraints we come into from a budgeting perspective. This is my first year on council. I had some very grandiose visions before I hit the reality of budgeting. So as much as I love these plans, I want to make sure we're taking into consideration the existing infrastructure, because even if we want to, we may not be capable of, and I think we need to balance our finances with what we're actually able to achieve while not putting ourselves backwards in our long-term plans. So just if you could speak to those. Sorry, it's loaded.
Good. Through you, Chair. I have grandiose ideas about all these projects when I start them as well. And it comes back real quickly once I have spoken to stakeholders, communities, certainly counselors, and those sort of things on what a community cannot achieve. Let's talk about parking. Currently right now on kind of a gross count, and it's crude, you're under 200, you have 196 stall opportunity down there if you park people correctly. Not many painted lines down there, you know, so people are parking all over the place and those sort of things. You have a marina activity down there also impinges on that. The reality is that between boat storage and the way people park and maneuver, that 196 gets eroded to about 120, 119. Each one of these schemes, the lowest one had 119. The rest of them exceeded it. They were into the close to 130 on the count. So in the end, even if we realign the road, do it well, put in proper parking environment, safer, more enduring, to accommodate types of vehicles that you may have at a beach run, I believe we can actually exceed what you have there. And it doesn't even have to look like that, you know, and that's that is probably the good news story. If you're following some of the strategies and project themes that we have in this document, we should be able to achieve, at least match, and maybe even exceed what you have down there. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but I'm up for it. I mean, that's not a question I haven't heard in most communities. We do a lot of streetscape work, same sort of thing. We're losing parking. But in the end, you have a much, much better environment. I'm happy to say, though, in this project, I think we're going to exceed the parking that you have down there, even with a full retrofit. What's happening with the arrivals process at your at the current beach waterfront is that everyone comes and stops, and no one goes down to the end unless you have a real peak day. And you do the balance of counts on peak days that you have in one given year. And are you really going to design for that peak day only, or are you going to design for good, healthful, safe efficiently operated parking environments for the majority of the time. But again, like, I think we can beat the counts. I'm pretty confident in that. On the other part, what you can and cannot do. The document also speaks about constituent versus or campaign projects. You will know better. You will know better what should be a constituent project and what your partnerships will be in the community. And you can help you do things or those things that might be more of a campaign fundraiser project. The document is part of a funding tool. There's a lot of information in it that can certainly be extracted. Councillor Mike made that point, can we get this stuff and pull it? Absolutely. And that's the whole intent of this. It's a living document. It could change a bit, but the intent is that it will outlive probably this council if it's done right. And that's what I work hard to do, to make sure it outlives you. It has a life cycle longer than you, because you cannot build this thing in the next 3 years, 4 years. It's going to take you 25 years. That information that's in that document should carry you through to that and be open to any sort of tweaks or evolution that comes about a change. We don't know what's on the climate front, right? I heard I think we had something earlier in this session tonight that really talked about a rainfall and those sort of things. We've heard from the Lake Huron Coastal Center folk as well on what's going on there, and certainly all their efforts and all that. That's all pointing to something. Our plan's pointing to something too. And it's really about managing this environment and making it operationally feasible for a municipality your size in spite of what might be coming out. So that's what we're looking at.
Councillor Blackwell, please go ahead. Your turn.
Thank you. Through the chair, I wanted to go back to Councillor Kennedy's point around, doing an infrastructure project and then ending up losing some of the character. And I think for me, that's the value of a plan like this. I recognize that for some, it may kind of feel like, nothing groundbreaking, which I think is also the point, is that it's really reinforcing what our community really does value and what they believe, but also the idea that I think you've described it as incremental development or things, but that how we interact with our environment is so crucial for our experiences. You can do things like crime prevention through environmental design. But instead of just saying, this is the best version of the road and this gets us the most parking, it's more, what is the spirit of the place, which is in the report? How do we, consider that as critical as funding, as critical as, how many amenities or parking stalls we get, right? Like, I think that for me is that element of how do you balance all of those to create and to keep what we love about the waterfront and improve what we haven't maybe upgraded, but also to ensure that anything that we're doing is adding to the value and adding to the character. And I feel like this kind of helps us to identify what that is, because I often find, this happened. I was in a webinar the other day and someone said, well, what's small town charm mean to you? And that's quite difficult. I think everyone can picture it in their mind, but to actually explain it is very difficult. And I found that this report was helpful in terms of maybe weeding through some of those things where you say like, yeah, on paper, this sounds great, but it does impact the character. It does impact the feel, how people feel there. And I'm taking up a lot of time. I hope that's okay because it's past my 3 minutes, but it was one of the things that did strike me in the report was in the first section, it talked about site plan. It talked a little bit about the different sections on the beach. And I found it didn't quite reflect how I, as someone who grew up here, kind of saw the two areas of the waterfront. So you talked about kind of the one being the more natural side, the south being the more natural and touristy side, and the north being the activity hub. And I would say that the best way that I can kind of describe the two is one is waterfront interactive, which is like the south has surfing and swimming and people come there and it's like kind of like a beachy resort, beach volleyball, which requires beach. And the north is much more about waterfront adjacent. So it's things that are really enjoyable to do for seniors, for families, for the parks, the music. But it's kind of beside the waterfront because the waterfront's a nice place. It's not necessarily that interactive with the waterfront. And that's the cultural differences I see between the two sides. And I think I just wanted to know your maybe comments and reflect on that a little.
Through your chair. I think you actually nailed the character piece there on waterfront or lake interactive versus lake adjacency between the two areas on, bookending both sides of the river. That is how we see it and how we feel about it. what do they look like in the future? And maybe this goes back to Councillor Kennedy's question, is really up to, the last set of strategies that are in the document. We talk about plan continuity, how we get things done, for sure. We also talk about the project design checklist. In that checklist, there are things that respect what we see in those areas. And you can have a group, a project championing group or whatever it may be at a municipal level, and maybe a community level, that will help you get through that, to do that. And then it'll come back to campaign establishment. I will also offer that you'll probably have differing groups advocating for differing things on both sides. So having the ability to be able to have a plan to follow through and say how we should do this has been built into the plan. It's that last set of strategies. I never get to see that. That's so far out on most projects for me, but it's the one that to me really resonates, because I know how difficult it is to be on track with things. Character is a big part of it. Community character, neighborhood character, all those parts will really come down to how do you write those terms of references when you get to the project.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Sean, you were supposed to give us, through you, Chair, Sean, you were supposed to give us a half a page of executive summary with everyone that just loves it, community, visitors, council, staff, everything, plus another half page of the 3 years that we have to spend money. And at the end, we have a wonderful project. It doesn't happen that way, does it?
Not
And
always.
one of the things that we're starting to see as you do these plans is that we're having a meeting next Monday, and the meeting's strategic. And is this going to be one of the strategic things that are going to follow? And that's the whole thing. If this doesn't become strategic plan 1, 2, or 3, it will be shelved for a while. But so we have to come together as a team, because what as Sean and his group has done is given us some plans, but we're going to have to work the plans with the committees, with the various, budgeting constraints that we have. Also the community, plus also this community that we don't really talk about is called visitors. Visitors really like something a little different than maybe environmental safety and everything else. They might want recreation, food booths and everything else. So what you have really done is given us a great amount of work in the future to really start putting it together. And I'm sorry to say that it's going to be exciting, but we're going to have to table this next Monday to figure out if it's part of our strategic plans for this year. Thank you.
Anything else? Sean, thank you. You've provided an excellent overview of the plan, and our congratulations to you, too, Jane. You've done a great job in leading this through our staff process as well. And Caitlin, you did awesome back there as well. Good for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving on. We have a vote, a motion on the floor that Committee of Whole recommend that council receive the waterfront master plan. It was moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. 7.1B, tender award, Davidson Center and Tiverton Sports Center dehumidifier replacements. Motion. Oh. We're going to go through till we get to E. Actually D. We'll do the next couple or three. They're straighter forward. There might be some discussion once we get to D and E, if you don't mind. Tender award, Davidson Center Sports Center, dehumidifier. Clerk, please, for the motion.
Moved by Rory Kavanaugh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray. That Committee of the Whole recommend that council award the dehumidifier replacement for the Davidson Center and Tiverton Sports Center RFQ number CS 2023-04 to Short Cooling Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $170,890 plus HST.
Questions? Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Good idea to put these together, Davidson Center and also the Tiverton Center. Just want to ask about the tendering process, because we're starting to see some very interesting things. I mean, we're actually doing both of these projects for less than $100,000 that we budgeted. I think that's wonderful, because we usually have it the other way, 100,000 over. How did we get that? I mean, we did some cost estimates, And all of a sudden now we're sitting around the council with an extra 100,000 that we probably could have used someplace else. Help me through this process. It was good to see there was 2 bids. I'd really like to see 3, but it's good to have 2. And the nice thing about the 2 bids, they weren't that far apart. So just explain the 100,000, that tendering and the cost estimate, and see if we can tighten it up. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. One of the issues is when budget is developed and finally approved, it's several months ago, right? We started that process internally back in September, and now we're today. So the market is changing slightly. We're starting to see a lot of bids coming under. So it's great news. Also, in this report, that is the base bid price. There's other costs not included in that, such as electrical tie-in, roofing exhaust tie-ins, and structural review of the platforms that these units sit on. I kept that out of the actual tendering, as the contractors that bid on these don't have that staff in-house, and they would have ended up hiring another subcontractor and applying markup. So felt it was more financial viable to do it in-house and use our local contractors that know the facilities and know our electrical systems that we have.
Councillor Stewart, yep.
Then just to follow up, so part of the 99,000 will be allocated to those contracts too. So it's not a true saving of a 99, it's something less than that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Other questions? Councillor Prenger?
Just to follow up to Councillor Stewart, so I take it by your response to Councillor Stewart's question, you don't expect it to be greater than the remaining outstanding items to be greater than the 99,000?
No, I don't.
Deputy Mayor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. Just on the back of that, was it not initially anticipated that it could have been done in-house? Is that something that just arose once the quotes came in?
Through your chair, no, it was always intended to do the electrical and any roofing modifications outside of the tender. It was never part of the tender. So just knowing these companies that were bidding, I just know from working with them in my past, I just know that they don't have a tender.
Councillor Prenger, please.
I just want to say, through the chair, I actually appreciate that you have that insight and did that, because anything our staff can do to be more efficient and effective and ensure that the projects we're doing progressing with are being addressed properly by our contractors is important to me. So thank you.
So I have a motion to accept the tender, or to recommend to council that we accept the tender. All in favor? That's carried. Tender award Davidson Center and Kincardine Arts Center roof replacement project. Clerk, please.
This moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that committee of the whole recommend that council award the roof replacement project for the Davidson Center and the Kincardine Arts Center contract to Grand Valley Roofing and Coating for a bid price of $208,236, HST excluded.
Any questions? Councillor Stewart?
Sorry to repeat this through you, Chair, but I'm really interested in the tendering. And this is a real interesting one, because we ended up with 2 tenders around our budget number, and then we ended up with 2 bids that were well over the bid. And this is like $100,000 difference. So the question comes to me is, what's happening here? Can you give us any insight? Like, I assume all 4 of these bidders, and it looks like you used our friends at Garland to help you through that bidding. So all 4 of them were okay. They all have the same guarantees and everything else. Just want to understand why the $100,000 difference? Thank you.
Yes, through you, Chair. Some of it can be allocated towards availability. If contractors are already very busy, they will end up bidding higher than they would normally would, because if they end up getting it by luck, it's their bonus, right? The other, I did discuss these with Garland, and they are seeing a wide range of prices on all roof projects right now. So it just comes down to availability and how hungry some contractors are.
Just a follow-up, get the hungry ones in the future like you did. Thanks.
Councillor Inchberger, please.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Trevor, those are some great answers. Follow-up ones there. I think I would, in the light of, we could help make these meetings even more efficient than they're starting to become. If some of these questions could be included in the staff report, and I think you might end up seeing actually fewer questions from council if these are in it, because you have some terrific answers for them.
Councillor Pranger?
Thank you through the chair. I'm curious as to if you have any relationship or previous experience with this company, Garland, and if not, what do you do to vet them, who you're choosing? Because as another counselor has brought up, there have been some reviews of this company that are very disturbing, and I'm just, what, no?
Not a Garland.
Who's the other one?
Garland, no, not a
No,
I
Garland.
messed that up.
Careful on the discussion. We need to be very cautious as we comment on any postings that we might have read.
Yeah.
We have to be very cautious. So a great question. Could you explain the process with Garland, what their role in all these roofing projects would be, please?
Yes, through you, Chair. Each of these companies that provided a bid were pre-vetted through Garland from their experiences with them. This company, Grand Valley Roofing and Coatings, Garland has over 20 years experience with them, has never had any concerns or issues with safety violations of any sort with them, as well as I obtained their WSIB WISER report, which indicates they have 0 incidents in the last 4 years.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I appreciate, there were some of us away when Garland was here, but they have provided great guidance to our staff in regards to what their project management will look like, speaking with Mr. Sanderson earlier today. Absolutely. So we have the motion. Is there any more questions regarding it? All in favor of the motion? That's carried. 6-minute break. All right, welcome back to our Committee of the Whole meeting for April 12th, 2023. We're at number D. The commemorative bench and tree program policy. Clerk, would you read the motion, please?
This is moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Pranger, that Committee of the Whole recommend that council approve of the commemorative bench and tree program policy as presented. And further, that council amend the 2023 fees and charges bylaw for the addition of the costs associated with this program.
And we welcome once again our director and what's manager. Karen, would you like to speak to this as we begin our discussion?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair. The main objective of this policy is to provide a framework for creating a consistent approach for the public to pay tribute to a person or occasion by purchasing a commemorative tree or bench for installation within the municipality of Kincardine. This policy will also create and enforce maintenance standards while providing for a plan to replace aging memorial infrastructure. The plan is to start this program, the bench program, in 2023. Annually, approximately 10 of the memorial benches from the oldest or in the poorest condition to the newest would be removed. These spaces would then be made available to the public to apply for and purchase. Commemorative benches would remain in their place for a maximum of 10 years. The commemorative tree program will remain on hold for 2023 until the bench program is successfully implemented, and then we plan to launch the tree program in 2024. The locations and species of trees will be dependent upon the desired locations requested and the species recommended by the horticulturalist.
I had no idea that we had 152 commemorative benches through our community. I had no idea. I thought it would be one bench here and there, so I applaud staff bringing forward a policy to direct the placement and maintenance of these. Questions, please. Councillor Kennedy.
No, just a comment. You know, the last few years, I know I've talked to Jane and Karen a lot about this, and there's just a lot of people in the community who've lost loved ones that really want to, you know, in honor of their spouses, kids, grandparents. You know, this is really important part of our community to have something like this. So I applaud them also. Thank you. Through the chair.
Through the bench. That's Councillor Black. Yeah. We've been here too long already. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. On my walks of the waterfront in preparation for the waterfront master plan, I saw quite a number of commemorations, and it is, I think, something that's quite important for us to have and for people to be able to, you know, offer that memory into the community. One of the things that was in the master plan for the waterfront and also came to us during the design and discussion around the streetscape was the sense of identity and that feeling of different places. And I worry that by having only one style of bench rather than leaving the policy open, that we may eventually identify furniture that is specific to the waterfront that can maintain and deal with the climate there versus things that are inland or in an area that has a different culture. I worry that we are not following the guidelines that we would kind of have just set with the waterfront master plan of that sense of identity and that sense of place by limiting it and having the policy say that there's only one style rather than limiting or saying something like that the bench style will be at the municipality's discretion.
Through you, and great question, and thanks for the question. One of the rationales on why we selected one design was really for replacement purposes, and if we need to use pieces of a certain bench to build other benches, it's something that we can easily do. But I can share with you that in the past, when we've done unique seating areas for waterfronts, we would certainly consider something like a Muskoka chair. It might be one other different style, and those would be situated in specific areas along the waterfront where people may sit and watch the sunset, but something uniquely different for a certain area. We're in a position right now because of capacity and based on what we can do, we certainly don't want to start to inherit another 10 to 15, 20 different styles of benches. And that's what we have right now. So when we look at a bench, we certainly want to keep it the same. We want to make sure that it's accessible with arms rests on the end so people can easily get in and out of it. And that it's conducive to not only the waterfront, but to our passive parks as well and our trails areas. But when we talk about waterfront, there will be, and I suspect when we go through this journey of designing what a boardwalk may look like, certain areas along the way that may be designated just for those, a couple of different, I say Adirondack chairs or Muskoka chairs as an example. It may be a different example, but it wouldn't be many. It might be 8 or 10 along the waterfront. We would not have more than 2 different designs right now. But in this particular program, this is specific just for one design. And again, I stress that the design that the park supervisor has designated is accessible to the public, easy to replace if we need to replace a board, and is uniquely different than most other communities. Instead of just doing a concrete end, these are a decorative end on them as well.
Councillor Blackwell?
Thank you. Through you, I guess I recognize all of that. I'm wondering if that's very slight wording change, if we're still saying it's at the municipality's discretion, that it allows for us to consider others in the future if we are wanting to do that, but it doesn't require us to have 10 or 20. There could be 3 styles. But again, I think it's just more that it's saying that if we go and, as one of the plans requested, and create a visual identity for the waterfront, that we're actually respecting that as part of how we're implementing this program as well.
Any other questions? So we have a motion to, where's it? Oh, there we are. Approve the commemorative bench and tree program policy as presented and amend the fees and charges bylaw in regards to it. That's a recommendation to council. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, the R zone policy. Clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the committee of the whole recommend that council approve the R zone policy as presented.
Once again, Karen, could you begin by defining what an R zone is?
I will. Thank you. Through the mayor, it's in my talk here, so I'll just keep going. The R zone policy is a recognized program across the province, specifically for community services programs in municipally owned facilities. The purpose is to promote an environment of safety in which violence and harassment are not tolerated. The policy provides the framework for the measures and enforcement steps to be taken to address any inappropriate behavior in municipal programs, facilities, and properties. The goal is to promote a positive, safe, enjoyable, and supportive environment for all staff and users, which also includes patrons, guests, spectators, fans, coaches, players, parents, and volunteers. The R in R zone stands for respect and responsibility. Respect for yourself, respect for others, and responsibility for your actions. Staff shared this policy with representatives of the OPP to obtain their feedback. Their comments were positive and supportive of the policy. Once approved, staff will be installing signage that promotes the R zone policy and will ensure it is shared with our users through social media, affixed to permits that are issued, creative signage in the facilities, and recognized on our municipal website.
Questions? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, I have lots of questions tonight, I guess. My question is why the program would be potentially limited in scope. I know that now community services handles all of our facilities, but I can think of many of our staff that are out in the community or who are in other locations that I would like them to be potentially protected under this policy as well.
So through the chair, so this is across the province, has been specifically for community services traditionally. And it is because most of our facilities are for all the users, like we have a lot of users that enter our facilities. So it is been specifically designed for community services. Other facilities in the municipality, they could refer to workplace harassment policies to protect themselves from any of that similar type of situation.
if I may. I appreciate the answer. Certainly within the context of the Municipal Administration Center, we have code of conducts for council members. We have harassment policies and stuff like that. But I think what I heard from Councillor Blackwell is, what about the gentlemen, men and women on our roads crew that are out digging a hole on the side of the road? Do they fall in under the protection of the R zone as well as our staff would within within the Tiverton Sports Center, for example?
I can add to that too. Our municipal employees have the benefit of having, falling under the violence in the workplace policy as well. This particular policy that we're sharing tonight is specifically for municipally owned leased facilities and properties and programs. So areas where we have programs specifically, it's really where this policy is reflective of. So that's in, the Davidson Center, that's in the Tiverton Sports Center. And we certainly have experienced some issues in those facilities over the last number of years, and we can confidently say that over COVID, and not that we always want to blame COVID, but we certainly have seen an increase as well. This is a very successful policy that has been, as the manager I identified, in many municipal recreation facilities. It was designed for municipal recreation facilities. It was developed by the Niagara region and adopted by many communities, and we're just wanting to adopt it now. We haven't made, I'll be honest with you, we haven't made any changes to it. That is across the community, across the province at this point. And it has been very successful in other communities.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Through you, Chair. I am happy to support this policy. I think it's an important one. So that's not where I'm going with this question, just to be clear. But I completely identify with what's in there. But one of the questions that comes to mind whenever I see a new policy is, how do we enforce it? Because I was really concerned when I heard about what some of the staff are being subjected to at the Davidson Center in that initial report that was provided. So I guess my question becomes, how do we enforce it now that we've adopted it? Because I understand it'll give us the teeth to say this is the standard. You did not meet it based on our policy, and by using our Davidson Center, you're accepting our policy. So I like that it gives the parameters of what's acceptable and not acceptable, but how are we going to enforce it if we continue to have issues?
So through the chair. So the first step, if it's approved this evening or whenever it's approved, is to do some education with not only our staff, but also the many user groups that use our facility, the hockey, the soccer, all of the people that rent our facility to do events. They'll need to be educated on this policy and how they're impacted and how they can impact it for the Davidson Center, or Tiverton. So that's the first step, is education. And the second is just continually training with our staff. A key component is staff to, if they see something or they witness something or something happens to them, they need to follow through with filling out the paperwork and taking it to the next level. And then it's up to management and the director to ensure that people who commit these offenses are reprimanded appropriately. That's how I feel it should be moved going forward.
Deputy Mayor Clark, please.
Thank you, Maris. Through you. I once again support this policy and think it's an important policy. I just wonder, when you talk about how the policy would effectively come into play in terms of filling out the paperwork and going to the next level, I note that part of the policy procedure would be notifying the OPP, depending presumably on what the incident is. How does that differ from what occurs now?
Thank you for the question, and through you. There are many times we don't have to call the OPP because of the nature of the situation. I can tell you, in my numerous years of being in this business, I've only twice had to ban someone from a facility. So it's not typically a practice that we would do. We go through the process, of educating them. In some cases, we work with OPP to ensure that if it's damage, that they've paid for that damage that has been done. And so the fact that we've got OPP on our side, so to speak, and that they have endorsed this as well, is substantial to have that backing. The fact that we haven't had a policy before, we haven't had that, I'll say, authority or backing in order to ensure that we have a program in place to how to deal with these, how to deal with an incident that may occur. So the first step is having the policy in place, and that's what we're doing tonight. Once, as the manager said, once we've got that policy in place, then we start the education process. So that's a long drawn out. I'm not sure if I've necessarily answered your question totally, but hopefully I have. I think the number one is having the policy in place, which we've never had before.
Thanks, Jane. I think it does. I think the emphasis with this policy is more on education, if I'm correct. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. I think it's, you know, it's important that we have respect wherever we go and that people coming into those facilities respect it the same way as they would respect their own home.
Oh, Councillor Prenger.
Thank you through the chair. I too in support of this policy and I'm happy to see it here in front of us tonight. I also wanted to say that I like that this policy actually has the guidelines for consequences written right into it. That was going to be, if I didn't see that, that was going to be my question, one of my questions. Do we have a regulated set? So that was great to see. And I guess so my follow-up question to what's already been asked is there an implementation plan already developed for the education of our stakeholders and our users that you were mentioning there, Karen, or do we still have to come up with that and figure out exactly who those groups are and how you're going to implement that?
So through the chair, we have a comprehensive list of all of our users at both facilities. Once this is approved, we are prepared to send out emails and social media postings to all of these groups and to share the policy with them. Even have orientation sessions with them if that's what they require at their executive or club meetings, just to make sure that all of their volunteers are hearing the same message.
Great. I follow up just for that. One thing is that I'm thrilled to hear that you already have that plan. That's great. And I was curious, and if I'm allowed to ask this, I'm not sure if the high school is one of those stakeholders that you're going to provide education on this too.
So we would probably include both of the Blue Water District School Board and the Grey Bruce Catholic School Board.
So you've heard the motion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. All right, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Deputy Mayor Clark to run the discussion regarding recommended community investment grants.
7.2, in accordance with the policy GG 3.5, community investment grants. The Community Investment Grants Evaluation Team has met to develop recommendations on the allocation of the budgeted funds. The team's recommendations are attached. Ms. Lori, yeah, please.
So this is moved by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that the committee of the whole recommend that council approve the community investment grants allocation as recommended by the Community Investment Grants Evaluation Team.
Are there any questions? Councillor Stewart?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm a little concerned about the one figure, and it's the hockey figure. We've been doing this for quite a few years. And to be honest with you, I noticed there's a note that we're going to discuss it for next year, and that's been going on for 3 years. This is the time to discuss that. We're giving a hockey association, a minor sport thing, 1/3 of the grants. I think that's a little bit generous. I think we should have shared it amongst, what was the thought behind giving hockey another $20,000 this year? Thank you.
If I could turn over to our clerk.
So through you, Deputy Mayor. So there is a formula for the sports funding. So $25,000 is allocated to the sports funding, and the formula is based on an 80-20 allocation, with 80% based on facility costs and 20% based on the number of participants. So the sports groups with the higher fixed costs, like ice and arena time, are allocated a higher portion of the funds, and as well as those that have higher participants. So it's based on a formula. Those groups do not get their funding until the fall, after we see the numbers.
Councillor, if I could just jump in as well. I think part of the issue had been bearing in mind that many of these groups have registrations that are now open or soon to be open, including hockey, which I think has early bird registration up until the end of June. Concern was that if there was a vast adjustment, they wouldn't have been able to adjust their fees potentially in time because no doubt that they set the registration fees at a set amount. And I think there needs to be a notice period. I think that's perhaps why the issue was for next year. And I appreciate your comments, but we need to ensure that the minor sports have sufficient notice that they can make the adjustments to the registration fees in good time. Any, Councillor Stewart?
Thank you very much. And just the follow up for that, thank you. And I can see that we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, so we have to go. But let's make sure for next year that we talk about this before we start. Because, you know, it seems to be, we might want to change this program just slightly. And it'd be nice that council has the time without interfering with what we're moving ahead. So for this year, I'll have to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, did you?
Thank you. Through you. I wanted to touch on the sports as well, because for some of the sports, it seems like they are doing things that are specific to their clubs. Whereas the Kincardine Minor Baseball seems to be asking for capital improvements to things that we own. And I'm just kind of curious why perhaps those capital improvements, why we wouldn't consider them through our capital budget rather than through this donation policy, which I will expect the intention used to be to support the program's operation rather than our own facilities.
Clerk, if I can turn it over to you.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So that is a good question. They have asked for lighting improvements, fence repair, weed and turf repair, new dugouts, rakes and sheds. So some of the money that has been allocated in the past will go to some things like new dugouts, which that group uses, rakes, sheds, things that they only use. But I'm not clear on the weed and turf repair.
Councillor Hinsberger.
Thank you. Through your Deputy Mayor, knowing very little about this, item 2 on there for the Burvey Community Center to replace the furnace. Now, everybody I'm sure realizes you can't replace 1/6 of a furnace. So I'm not trying to ensure somebody's left out in the cold. Does anybody here know about what the prospects are for that organization to raise the additional funds, or they basically going to be waiting on 5 years of community impact grants in order to place a piece of equipment? Just looking for a little background there.
Clerk, if I can turn over to you.
So through you, so these grants do have to be used in this year. So they understand that the funds the municipality gives are not to be the entire project. So they would have to use that $1,000 allocated this year for the allocated purpose, or else they would have to come back to the committee to say what they were going to use it.
Any further questions? If there are no questions, perhaps we can take a vote on the motion. Do we need the motion to be reread or no? Okay, all in favor? Any again, opposed? That passes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And the Community Investment Committee that makes those recommendations. It is a challenging, daunting task to divvy up the funds amongst many worthy groups. We have a motion that was presented by Councillor Kavanaugh, this discussion piece, private use of flatbed and construction materials on public trails. Councillor Kavanaugh, would you like to speak to that, please?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, and over the weekend in the community, there was observed by a good number of people and forwarded to my attention that a private construction company had been using the passageway between the ring on Station Beach and Goddard Street, that waterfront trail section. And there was some concern that perhaps they were operating outside the bounds of the municipality. And I thought it would be a good idea to bring this forward and just as a question to staff, ask if they could explain a little bit what was going on there and what's the current status of that project.
Director, can you speak to that, please?
Certainly through you, with the lack of not having a parks bylaw, some of these actions we have to make rash decisions. And so I can give you a little bit, what I know about this project is that the contractor had approached our staff to utilize the trails for the purposes of doing construction in their backyard. And this occurrence happens on a regular basis in some cases, depending on the time of the season. And it might be a trails, it might be a park, it might be the waterfront where people want to do work on their property and they have to access municipal property to get to it. So this individual did reach out to staff and we did develop an agreement with them, which staff were we actually, even to back up a bit, we did get some advice from our insurance provider as well in developing the letter. So had checked off our boxes to date. And I can tell you our park supervisor was down there today, took a look at it, took some pictures, and is continuing the conversations with the contractor. So that's, I think, everything I can share with you about the project, but certainly without having a parks bylaw right now, it does impede some of, we need to make some quick decisions because we respect the fact that people are doing good neighborly things and keeping their properties looking in a good condition. And this was something that we provided.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I also was down there with the beautiful weather. It was hard not to be out. I just have a question in terms of what the expectation is for returning the damaged sections of that trail back to its former state and how that will be monitored.
I don't have the details tonight. I could have got that for you, but I didn't bring that with me. It's certainly a continuing conversation with the park supervisor and with the contractor. The contractor is obligated to replacing it and putting it back in the same condition as best as he can as he left it. And that's currently with our park supervisor and in with operations.
Thank you, Director. Excellent work. Councillor Inchberger.
Thank you, through your mayor. It's a quick question about the communication. I think I remember seeing relatively recently, we issued something to the public when some bridges in the trail system were basically not available, impairing the use. So I don't know what degree the use of that pathway between the ring and Goddard Street was affected. And I'm just wondering, well, we may not have an applicable bylaw to how to regulate giving approvals for that. Was there an opportunity there at least to provide some communication or some signage at the place that would help people realize what exactly was going on and that it wasn't really running afoul of anything?
Through you, I can answer the knowledge that I have. I did question if the trail was going to be closed, and I was told that they would have flags people on both ends to ensure the safety of users, so that did not impede having to close down the trail. I can't give any more details because that's all the information that I have tonight.
Councillor Stanoff Gray.
Through you, Chair, you made reference to the fact that we lack a parks bylaw. Do other municipalities have bylaws that we could leverage in order to correct this gap?
Thank you for the question, and through you. Certainly a number of municipalities do have parks bylaws. It is a long process in developing one, but one that certainly provides us some strength, I'll say, or some backing when we're dealing with things such as motor vehicles on our trails or nuisances within our parks. We do have some bylaws already in place that are acceptable for some of those, but definitely bringing that together is certainly a very good document to have. Parks bylaw would also deem, as an example, our beach as a designated park as well, which it currently is not. So certainly something that staff can take a look at. It is a long process. I share that with you. And this year, if staff is able to get to it, it would probably be only in draft form. Probably would not be a fulfilled bylaw at this point.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate the input. All right, Mayor's update, just a couple of comments. We had Lake Huron Center for Coastal Conservation. They are part of a greater work which is carried on by the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, which deals with binational issues that affect the Great Lakes. The municipality of Kincardine was, I'm going to think it's a founding member, one of the early members of that organization. And we had a virtual meeting today to discuss some of the lobbying efforts that we're going to take and the work that they're doing. So it just seemed to be timely with the Lake Huron Coastal Conservation Center here closer to home. Just recently, today I sent you the responses that we received from the attendees to the Chamber of Commerce Breakfast with the Mayor. And Wednesday, day after tomorrow, I'll be attending a breakfast with the OPG alumni, which hopefully will produce a different, and also another challenging list of things that we should do, shouldn't do, or maybe might think about doing. So those opportunities to speak out in the public and present council's views on things are challenging. There's never a lack of questions, but they are a great opportunity for those of us that don't do Facebook. We do this thing called conversation, and it's challenging but exciting as well. So anyway, okay, consent agenda. These are considered routine and are enacted by one motion. And of course, you can always request one or more items to be removed for separate discussion or action. Clark, would you read the motion, please? There is. All right. Any items that any councillors would like to draw our attention to? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair. There's two actually, and one is really just a comment. It's 8.3 statistics, blah, blah, blah. And it's March 2023 Building Services Report. I believe everyone should really have a serious read about this. It's only a comment because it's only the first quarter, but we're looking at a big discrepancy between permits and value of permits compared to last year. 4.5 million this year, year to date, that's the first quarter, versus 22.7. Permit numbers seem to be pretty close, 37 versus 44, but for now, it's just a comment. But if we see this trend starting, we're going to definitely have to look at things probably in July and August. So we'll see what happens in the second quarter. The other one I like to talk about, and I'd like to thank Jane, it's C, incident at the Davidson Center Parks facility. The only thing I would be saying is I come from an old school, and you know, when we sort of basically forbid the high school students coming down to the Davidson Center for those 2 or 3 days, I would probably institute that right for the end of school year. I think this is outrageous. I think that, you know, you've done a good job with investigating, but I don't think kids really need to come down to the Davidson Center during lunch hour. And I would recommend that we forbid them until the end of the school year, until you have your conversations with the OPP and the principal. But I come from old school. I mean, you do something like this, it might only be 1 or 2% of the kids, but I don't want them hanging around the Davidson Center. There doesn't seem to be any value during their lunch period. Anyways, thank you.
That comment has sparked some interest. Were you going to speak to that as well? Or if not, then I would go to another couple who were gonna. It was about health is first. Can we come back to that? If we can carry through the comments regarding the other, I'll come back to you. Councillor Kennedy, now keep in mind, our director has informed us that there are many parts of this discussion that will not be discussed in a council, an open session. So if there's some general comments, that's okay, but we just need to temper our comments. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Kennedy.
No, through the chair, you know, like I disagree with that. I really believe that one or two or three kids that, you know, did some damage don't really show the total effect of all the kids that go through that Davidson Center in record numbers and play all kinds of sports. And if anything, to me, we should look at it the other way. Find things for them to do in that building, you know, when they have spare time, no matter if it's lunchtime, you know, half a day off, whatever. To me, I look at it kind of as the opposite. You know, we're here to help youth, and that's, to me, hopefully, that's just my comments. Okay.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'll agree a little bit there with Councillor Kennedy. I see our facilities as somewhere where the community can come and feel welcome. I don't believe that you know, our community center should be somewhere that limits to paying customers only. It should be a place that we see as an extension of the street, of the park, of, you know, somewhere that people can come and feel that they belong. We talk a lot about the isolation of folks and loneliness and the fact that there aren't things for people to do, and how we utilize our community space says a lot about how we value people. So I would be very cautious about us having any kind of policy. I think now with the R zone policy that we can address people who don't behave in a way that kind of keeps that safe space. But I think the idea of just kind of changing the use of that from a community center to something that we regulate in that way is not in line with my philosophy.
Councillor Hinchberger. Sounds like you have a two-part.
I
response.
do. On this one, thank you through your chair. I'll probably come in somewhere in between the two extremes there. We have a definition of loitering in our public nuisance bylaw, and I checked out a few other municipalities as well. And the one I liked was for the town of Greater Napanee, and they realized that the definition of loitering will have something to do with the purpose of the place or facility where you are. And it says, you know, loitering means to linger, hang out, travel idly, and includes to rest, to stand, sit, or recline without a purpose relating to or any activity which is contrary to the property. So while I am fully in agreement that we need to have more activities for all people of all demographics, including younger people in the community, I do feel that in this regard right now that the Davidson Center as designed is not meant for the purpose for which it was being used during the lunch hour period. So it's like I told a colleague of mine today, for example, like 50 people having a 3-hour picnic in Dunsmore Park, that wouldn't be loitering because it's designed for that. But 50 people having a 3-hour picnic in the lobby of this building, that would be loitering. So I think that there's a distinction that need to be made here, and that with regards to the David Center, especially for a lunch hour period, which might be 45, 50 minutes tops, and the type of behavior that was going on there, I think there's a difference between the building and the grounds itself and the parks around it. But I think that what was occurring in the Davidson Center itself would closely meet the definition of loitering, and therefore that's actually shouldn't or strongly would not be permitted either. Thanks.
Point number two.
Point two, which
was your first point to begin with.
It was just a very quick one about to follow on Councillor Stewart's about the building services report. I don't have it right up in front of me. One thing I asked Jill to do, and Dwayne did it as well, was to add a line item for additional residential units in there. And it's something that many of us, Beth and I went to the housing forum hosted by Bruce County, and they really touted in there the additional residential units and the changes that are being made. So I'm really keenly watching that. And right now, unfortunately, on this one, we're pitching a shutout, which isn't a good thing.
Yep. So if I recollect correctly regarding that report, there was one significantly expensive industrial permit, which kind of skewed the values. So it was 10 or 12 million, something like that. So I appreciate Councillor Stewart's comments. We should always look for ways to maximize the appropriate development in our community. And so
We're still half price.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn from committee of the whole.
That's moved by Beth Blackwell and seconded by Bill Stewart, and it's 7:21 PM.
All in favor? That's carried. All right, matters arising from committee of the whole. First on the agenda is the motion from Councillor Stewart that our staff will provide council with a report in May on the extreme past weather rain event with focus on our wastewater and drainage issues and concerns. It was moved by Councillor Stewart. And we need a seconder for that motion, seconded by Councillor Hinchberger. Is there any discussion? Would you like to speak to that?
Well, since I did the motion, what I'm looking for is because we had that extreme weather event, there was some fatality, not fatalities, thank God, but there wasn't any damage, but there was a lot of flooding and everything. So I assume that Adam and his team were going to give us a report sooner or later because we've had some problems with the waste management. I think we had 3 pumping stations that got overwhelmed. You know, there's some roads that got overwhelmed. So, you know, all I'm saying is I hope we have a follow-up and maybe even some PM so we can understand this, because when we designed a lot of this drainage and everything was for a 100-year storm. And guess what? That storm wasn't really a 100-year storm, but it came awful quick. So we might want to rethink some of our engineering. So I'm hoping that between Adam and Mark and Corey, they'll come back with a report sometime in May. Thank you.
Yes, CAO.
Yes, just briefly, following that weather event, we did have a conversation about whether or not it would be prudent at some point in the not too distant future to actually consider whether the municipal design standards need to be adjusted. So for new development, you know, we are seeing flash flooding. And if you visit other places in the States, you would notice much larger storm catch basins than we typically see here. And it's, you know, the designing of our roadways may need to change based on the weather events that we expect to see in the future. So yeah, it's certainly something we're thinking about.
Heard the motion, all in favor? And that's carried. Waterfront master plan, clerk, please.
This is moved by Jennifer Prager, seconded by Mike Hinchberger. That council received the waterfront master plan dated April 6, 2023, and presented with reports. Parks Facilities 2023-13.
Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Davidson Center, Tiverton Sports Center dehumidifier. Do you want me to read this? Are you all right? You're good? Okay.
Moved by Andrea Clark, seconded by Rory Kavanaugh, that the award tender RFQ number CS 2023-04 bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2023-059.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Commemorative bench and tree policy. Clerk, please.
This is moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that the commemorative bench and tree program policy bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-060.
Heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Consolidated rates and fees amendment bylaw. This will be, that was the second half of that motion, the bench policy, but the fees that go along with it.
This is moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Jennifer Pranger, that the 2023 Consolidated Rates and Fees Amendment 4 bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-061.
Heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. The R zone policy, clerk, please.
Moved by Mike Hinchberger, seconded by Andrea Clark, that the R zone policy bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-062.
Heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Davidson Center and Kincardine Arts Center roof tender.
Moved by Rory Kavanaugh, seconded by Amanda Steinhoff Gray, that the art award tender for roof replacement bylaw be deemed to read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2023-063.
Heard the motion. All in favor? That's carried. And Deputy Mayor Clark, could you ask for the motion to be read? I have to declare on 8.7. regarding community investment grants.
Clerk, if we could read the motion for the community investment grants.
Moved by Doug Kennedy, seconded by Beth Blackwell, that council approve the community investment grants allocation as recommended by the Community Investment Grants Allocate Evaluation Team.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Okay, general announcements. Deputy Mayor Clark, we'll start with you.
I have none.
Councillor Hinchberger.
I also have none there.
Councillor Pranger.
I have none tonight, thank you.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. June 17th, which is exactly 2 months from now, Rock with Your Docs is going to be happening for the second time. Sorry, Councillor Kennedy. I encourage everyone to come on out, get their tickets and enjoy a great show and support a good cause.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray.
I just wanted to remind everybody that they're selling socks at Ronald McDonald's House to support Ronald McDonald House Charities. As someone who's used the Ronald McDonald's House, I cannot speak to what it means for different families all over the place. And just to emphasize that when you go through, they have roundup for Ronald McDonald Charities and you can round up to the nearest dollar value. So I just wanted to do a shout out for McDonald's. Thanks.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you very much through you, Chair. The Tiverton District Alliance are having their annual garage sale on May the 12th and 13th. Donations will be accepted from the 10th all the way to the 12th. So clean out your house, bring as much as you can, and we'll sell it and give the money back to the community. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. This week is National Volunteer Week and, you know, looking around this table, I don't think I see anybody who isn't a volunteer in our community. So thank you. And also thank you to the incredible volunteers that we have. I don't think I've ever lived anywhere where there's as many people giving back in as many different ways. I also want to mention there's a blood drive happening on Wednesday. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, this month is also organ donation month. And I know, Val, but as someone who has benefited from blood donation and who knows people who have benefited from organ donation, it's near and dear to my heart. So if it's in you to give, if you're able to, I encourage signing up for that.
Councillor Kennedy.
Well, this was third on my list, but I wasn't gonna bring this up yet, but yeah, I know that, no, don't do that. Kincardine Lions Club have their annual garage sale on June 3rd at the Kincardine Legion. And I'll let people know over the next month when they can drop things off. So, but both Lions clubs do a lot of great work, so be out and support them.
CAO, do you have some announcements for us?
I sure do. So in the theme of cleaning up, so the council will be aware of the spring cleanup week that takes place from April the 17th to the 23rd. So folks can leave out their unwanted items if they don't want them. Somebody else can come around and pick them up. There's also opportunities to pick up cleanup kits from the customer service desk at the Davidson Center, which includes garbage bags, gloves, and a list of drop-off locations where people can take garbage bags. People can head out to local parks and the beaches if they would like to help clean things up. And we also have a reminder for the public as we get into that season, the burn permit applications are available online. So people can do that process that way or simply call the Kincardine Fire and Emergency Services at 519-396-2141.
Excellent. So we have a motion now that we will move into closed session for the purpose of considering a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, specifically a Bruce Telecom update pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended, and further the council return to regular open meeting upon completion. We need a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Kennedy and seconded by Councillor Kavanaugh. All in favor? And that's carried. So we will District until